And speaking of nuts, the second match on the card is Edge versus Matt Hardy. Now, this was crazy. Now, I mentioned earlier on the very last live WWE show that I went to was in 2005, and I remember it was a SmackDown in Raleigh, North Carolina. And this must have been a show really close after the news broke and was leaked of the Edge and Lita affair, because I was in North Carolina. I was in Matt and Jeff's backyard. I went to a lot of shows there. Their friends would roam the arena. And that night, I remember a lot of Lita is a hoe chants and a lot of disparaging chants towards Lita. I think there might have been a Raw I went to around this time as well, also in North Carolina, and she wasn't even out there, and the fans were just chanting Lita is a slut and all this stuff. So I remember it was really close to when all of that was kind of leaked, and then, of course, when Matt Hardy found out about it, he went public. He's basically the one that told the world about this affair, and it was a big deal online, and I remember just being really surprised and really shocked. And it got Edge and Lita a ton of heat, not only from the fans, but from the locker room. And during that time, correct me if I'm wrong, they were doing the angle with Kane and Matt Hardy and Lita. And then there was the pregnancy angle or something, or the match for custody of Lita, or whatever was going on there between Kane and Matt Hardy and Lita. Matt Hardy got hurt during that. He had to go. And then they wound up just turning Lita because I think they couldn't ignore what the fans already knew about her and Edge. So they almost had like no choice but to pair her and Edge up, because Matt Hardy, went out there and told everybody what was going on. And this also resulted in Matt Hardy getting released. I guess WWE didn't like that he spilled the beans and he was kind of fucking up their storylines and, getting these guys heat and everything, and kind of maybe they felt he was handling the situation unprofessionally. I don't really fault Matt at all. If that's somebody that you love and you're expecting and assuming you're going to be with forever and they cheat on you, however you lash out, that's your way to do it. I don't think Matt ever got violent, although in his head, I'm sure Matt wanted to beat the shit out of Edge, but that really... It never got down to that. There were some rumors and some slashed tires and things like that, but nothing physical or violent, I don't believe, ever really went down. It was just how Matt kind of handled it and just told everybody the entire story. I remember watching some shoot interview that he did, and he detailed the entire thing from finding out, and I was across the room in the other part of my house, and I could see through the window her phone was lighting up at 3 a.m. after we had just fucked for 3 hours, and I went and checked her phone, and it was Adam. I mean, he just went through everything here. So that got Matt Hardy released, but it was a bullshit release, like we would see 5 years later with Daniel Bryan. The fans got really, really pissed and made a lot of noise about it, to where I think Matt made it nearly to the end of his 90-day, and WWE brought him back in and rehired him, largely in part because of the fans were saying, yo, this is bullshit. And I remember Vince brought him back out on TV, and this is Matt Hardy and all that. So that was a great moment. Now, Matt had appeared prior to this, and it was probably the closest they had ever come to convincing me that something wasn't a work, because it was brilliantly done. I wish they would do more stuff like this. It was the deal, I think it was on Raw or somewhere, might have been the pay-per-view prior, where Edge is backstage with Lita, and then he's just out of nowhere blindsided by a charging Matt Hardy, who just attacks him. They made it look like he broke into the building and attacked Edge. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, holy shit. And then I'm like, okay, this is a work. But at the same time, wow. I just try to put myself in Matt Hardy's shoes, or Edge's shoes for that matter, but mostly Matt Hardy. This has got to be extremely difficult to be able to, especially in the particular line of work you're in. It's one thing if you're just two lawyers and you're forced to sit across the desk from each other because you happen to work together and you're both involved with the same woman. Yeah, that can be tense and awkward and all of that and horrible, but, it's probably manageable. In this line of work, you're actually fake fighting someone. So how are you supposed to go out there and be so physical with someone that you fucking hate, but at the same time be professional and all of that? It's just got to be so hard. I mean, I know there's big money at stake here, and this is your job, and you have to do that. But man, it would just be, to me, it would have been just really hard if I'm in if I'm in Matt Hardy's shoes to do this. And Edge, he's talked about it before. During all of this, he did have a lot of remorse in his heart. He ruined his friendship with Matt Hardy. And he did a lot of damage, got him a lot of heat. He had regrets, and he had remorse, and he did feel bad for what happened. So now he's got to go out there and awkwardly, really, really pretend to hate this man that he did wrong, a man that was his friend. And he's got to just be so vicious to him on the mic. I remember Edge. I mean, you could tell the real beef that was there. When Edge repeatedly said on TV how much more of a man he is than Matt Hardy in more ways than one, or in every way possible. He made it known that he's bigger than Matt. He's better in the sack than Matt. All this shit. And I just don't know how you can have a storyline that has this much reality sewn into it and at the same time be professional. So props to both of these guys for somehow managing to get through this whole thing and managing to grow as people, managing to come out on the other side of this and become friends again. I mean, as far as I know, Matt and Edge are cool. They even did a table for three or not long ago, I think. Or they did something where he's been with Edge a couple of times, maybe even something at the Hall of Fame. I don't remember. So the fact that they've been able to patch up that beef is pretty incredible, considering how gnarly the whole thing was. So, that's kind of the backstory there of how this match came to be. Matt attacked Edge, on Raw, and then he kind of got brought back in by Vince McMahon, and they booked the match for SummerSlam. Now, before the match here, they were running through the video recap package of this whole situation, and it was kind of funny to hear Matt say, "Adam, you ruined my dream of one day being able to have children," which cracked me up because correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't Matt have 16 children? So he's got a lot of kids now. I know he doesn't have 16, he has 4, but still, you get my drift. I just thought that was really funny that he was blaming Edge for ruining his dream of having a family when they both turned out fine and both married. Well, Edge married a really good woman. Matt married a very good woman for him, but one that's probably a bit crazy. But he's got a great family, and his kids are cute as shit. So everybody, have you seen that Maxwell? Oh my God, kid's gonna get so much you-know-what when he gets older. So they both landed on their feet. They're both happy. They're both in a really, really good place in their life, and that, as a wrestling fan, makes me happy. But this match was a whole different story, and it was just odd and awkward, and honestly, it was a bit one-sided. I was looking forward to this match, and I remember watching it live. I ordered this on pay-per-view that night. And I remember being really disappointed with the outcome because I thought they could have done so much more here. And what they would do after this, I felt fell a little bit flat too. You could have really made some money off this, if you maybe made it a little bit less lopsided. And here, they come out to the ring. I think Lita and Edge come out first. And is there anything hotter than 2005 Lita? If there is, I'd like to see it because Jesus Christ, you know what I'm talking about. So Edge and Lita are out there. Matt comes out swinging, immediate brawl right from the beginning. Edge even nails Matt at one point with a spear off the apron, kind of like how Big E does sometimes, and he goes flying through the ropes. That was a pretty scary looking spot, and the whole thing was basically just a brawl, but it didn't last very long, maybe 5 minutes of brawling. And they're up in the corner, and I think Matt is raining blows upon Edge's skull, and Edge just kind of drops him face first onto the top of the ring post. And it's a sick shot. I mean, it looked like Matt might have been busted hard way there. When you go back and replay that, I watched it about 3 or 4 times. I'm like, he really did smack the fuck out of his face on the top of that ring post, and he spills all the way to the floor. Down there, I'm sure he's doing an additional blade job, but when he gets back in the ring, he's just busted wide open, just an obscene amount of blood, a lot like we would see from Hulk Hogan later on in the night. So he's busted open. Edge goes out there to retrieve him, starts punching away at the open wound, throws him in the ring. Several very stiff and vicious kicks to the head, which I thought was playing all this perfectly. But then they just do a ref stoppage. Referee stops the match because Matt Hardy cannot continue. Edge is declared the winner. And I remember thinking that was just a little bit of a letdown, but it also, played into everything well because you can go beyond this now. You can have another match and another match, which they would do. But I kind of just wish, I guess it's not even the ref stoppage that made me upset. It's just that it didn't go a little bit longer, that we didn't get a little bit more intensity, and they could have told even more of a story than they did, even though I thought they told a pretty good one. And that whole Matt Hardy will never die thing. And the way I think that they followed up with this was a bit underwhelming as well, because it was very one-sided. I think Edge won all of the matches between the two. The only one that I can remember for sure that Matt won was a cage match, and that might have been at the next pay-per-view. And then I know there was a show I did a review on a couple of years ago. I think it was the Raw Homecoming show. in October or whatever it was when they went back to USA. I'm pretty sure that's where they did the loser leaves town match, and that's when Lita kind of crucifixed Matt in the corner, allowing Edge to, I think it was a ladder match or something. Maybe that's what it was. It was something like that that kind of blew off the feud and sent Matt to another brand to get everybody away from each other. So aside from that one, I think, cage match victory, this was mostly Edge, and I think they could have maybe gone a little bit further with it, but they probably thought it was best just to keep all of the parties here separated and let things cool down and blow over, and that's probably why Matt was moved over to the SmackDown brand after that. But all in all, this feud was extremely interesting, and when you think about feuds that have real life sewn into it, there have only been a few, and this is one of the most memorable ones because it's so real life, it's so incredibly real life, and it was all happening real time. Edge and Matt Hardy was an interesting match and an interesting storyline, to say the least. And like I said, I'm just glad that both guys came out on the other side, and they're happy and they're better people for it.